Yes.
Not just, sort of differences in the realm of, I mean, one of the things that's so funny about like seeing someone like Mayor Pete start to make noise about running for the Senate in Michigan is that one of the very first stories that comes out, of course, is that he said yes to all the same crazy stuff that Kamala Harris said yes to when she was running the first time around, including paying for, trans operations for criminals and that type of thing. And that just kind of shows you the Democrats are the ones who are in lockstep on all of this stuff, where you have this top-down approach, this radical agenda that they really pushed within the cultural space. And I think that they really have trapped themselves now into a position where, look, my friends over at Echelon Insights, Patrick Ruffini and Kristen Sanderson, they do, occasionally some of these polls. And Patrick was pointing out the other day that Jasmine Crockett got 2% in their Democrat
Wow.
poll. Okay, 2%. Now, 2% is basically nothing, but the point is that that's where Beto O'Rourke was, the last time around and that kind of thing. And guess who didn't even have a percent? Wes Moore, in Maryland, who probably, like whatever you think of Wes Moore.
He's formidable.
He's formidable, and he has a far more capable, approach to reaching, I would say, more mainstream voters than someone like Jasmine Crockett. But that's what plays. And so what you're going to end up with, I think, is a dynamic where on the Republican side of the aisle, you are going to have serious debate among serious people. And for the Democrats, they have such a weak bench. They have not allowed these younger players to contribute. They have not allowed them to learn the lessons that they needed to. And so because of that, they're just going to be firing off shots for the online crowd and keeping their coalition from learning the lessons that they need to learn in order to come back.
And I didn't even name governors. I didn't name Youngkin and DeSantis and all the other governors who are out there. I didn't name anyone. These are all Beltway people and national federal people. Ben, let's get to the issues at hand. This was a big week for everything, but let's start with the vice president's speech in Europe, which I've urged listeners to take in its entirety. I've played 6 or 7 sound bites of it. They'll be on the podcast ahead of you. And Matt, what did you make of that speech?
Well, I think that you actually already noticed this because I can't remember if you threw a like in there or something, but I made the point that it took J.D. Vance 4 weeks to make a more meaningful and memorable speech than anything that Kamala Harris did in 4 years.
Yep.
And the truth is that speech, which I do encourage everyone, we have the full text of it too at The Spectator if people want to go to thespectator.com. And it's one of these things that I think is a document that sends an extremely strong message, and also one that already has gotten under the skin of the Europeans.
Oh, yes, it did. Oh, boy, did it get under their skin.
Yes. And here's the thing, Hugh, you and I pay attention to this because we've seen the way that this stuff creeps. And so much of the time, Europe is ahead of the curve on these things. And then they also do not share the same level of protection for individuals for when it comes to issues of free speech and the like that we enjoy here in America. And that's something that I think was a very powerful message from the perspective of from J.D. Vance, which is consistent with his approach, by the way. This is not like he's adopted this recently. It's something that he's talked about in the past and something that's very important when it comes to stressing this importance for the West. And that's what I really do believe he's trying to represent, which is we have Western values that actually has to mean something. And it means that we don't go down the road of these authoritarian regimes down the world. And when we start to drift in that direction, there needs to be quick pushback and very loud. Otherwise, you run the danger of having these types of things, in nations that do not have those same free speech rights instilled in law, into a direction that can lead to them behaving in very authoritarian ways very easily.
Left-wing authoritarian ways. Left-wing.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about fascism, but I am worried about left-wing authoritarianism. Ben, I want to cross the T. The parallel is Trump and Nixon because they were friends in New York, very different background. But the T-bar, the going down, is the J.D. Vance-Nixon ascent. Nixon begins in 1946 with the Hiss hearings. Beats Helen Gahagan Douglas. Ike taps him, and he never goes away. I mean, he resigns, but he still doesn't go away. He's always a player after a brief exile in the elbow of America San Clemente. He's back on the stage advising people. J.D. Vance breaks in with the book out of nowhere. Very much Nixon's class and background and family structure, which wasn't great, but strong, and goes to Yale Law School. Nixon goes to Duke, and Nixon goes to the Pacific, and JD goes to the Marines. I think Vance is going to be with us for a very long time. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree, and I think it's because he stands for something more than just the emergence of a brief coalition. He stands for a lot of the ideas that inform that direction, and he comes to it also, by the way, as someone who, even though he is from that originally, still I think has the veneer of someone who is viewed as a traitor to his class. Something that I think is very important, meaning that you go this route and then you go to the Ivy, but then you're also viewed as being someone who can critique it with the information that you've gained along the way. And that, to me, is really a powerful aspect of him and why he understands the elite and understands why they need to be reformed, rejected, and replaced. And that's something that, is, I believe, going to give him, some enormous fuel beyond just this moment. But look, we're seeing it happen right before our eyes, and it may not have as dramatic a moment as fun as going out to the pumpkin patch, but you do have something, I think, in him that is consistent with that. And I think
there are certainly enough Chinese spies in the country to allow him to do that. Well, we'll just have to. We've got at least as many Chinese spies running around the country as we did Soviet spies and co-opted people. So don't count that out yet. I'll be right. And maybe Senator Cotton will do that. Over my shoulder is his book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China. He'll be here next week. Ben, you're not a prophet. I'm not the son of a prophet. We don't know what will happen by Saturday sundown in Israel. But, boy, there have been a lot of different signals. My default position is support whatever the government decides to do in Israel because they're our ally and they know more than we do and they know what their citizens want. What do you think that's going to be?
Oh, man. It's very difficult to be someone who is optimistic at this point about what needs to happen. I concur with you, obviously, Hugh, and I think that there's going to be some very clear messages sent here in terms of what comes next. Now, I'm someone who wants peace and wants to not have to go down the route of the kind of things that I think are more than likely not to happen. But in terms of the expectations that we have at this point, and given the signals that you and I have been paying attention to, there is a path back to peace that is going to involve further loss of life, and I think that unfortunately that's going to be what has to happen. But look, in terms of our perspective on Israel, we know this administration. We know that they have the clarity of perspective on this that the Biden administration totally lacked. That they, saw everything through the lens of domestic politics and through the politics of their own coalition. We don't have that problem here, and I'm very confident in terms of the leadership that we have that will be ready to support them in decisions that they make in order to maintain their own security.
And have you listened to Dan Senor's interview yet with Yoav Gallant?
I have not.
Well, it's really bracing, and it's a very interesting. He wanted to blitz Lebanon on October 11th because he knew about the pagers and the walkie-talkie. He had a whole plan. He lays it out, and it's really making waves in Israel. But I don't think it'll affect tomorrow. Whatever they do, whatever Netanyahu and his government do, is fine by me. And I think Trump will go along with it. That's the key thing. Trump's not going to insist they escalate for the sake of escalation, is he?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think that's his attitude at the moment either. I mean, I think that when he speaks about these things, and we can obviously have perspective now on the different approaches and the way that he's, I think, using this second term differently, speaking differently, he's entering in a much different circumstance than he did last time around, facing so many challenges around the world. Ukraine was obviously the focus this week, but there's so many things that I think, are on his plate. And he wants this to be a problem where Israel solves it. They've been solving it. We are there to support them. And this administration, like I said, is clear in terms of their direction in a way that the last administration was spastic, was ill-formed, and frankly, again, was torn in different directions by their own domestic political coalition, and remains so today.
Oh, boy, they're shattered.
Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against George. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon's kept within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk.
Welcome back, America. You know, Ben Domenech is my guest on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Ben, I have milked this. I've probably played it 10 times, and Harley laughs every time.
Is that the new performance at the Kennedy Center? Oh, no. that didn't have enough of a drag element to it. By the way, Hugh, did you see that they were protesting the removal of the drag shows at the Kennedy Center by having a drag dance performance in front of the Kennedy Center? Are they trying to make us more happy?
I guess so. This makes me happy just watching it again. Ben, let's get serious. There was a Hill article yesterday, and it really set me off. People attacking Elbridge Colby. Now, I'm not a good friend of Elbridge. He's been on the show a couple of times. I've met him a couple of times around town. I didn't read his book. I know he's a China hawk. Some people think he's ultra MAGA. I don't. I think he's just a China hawk with a priority. I want Ukraine to get whatever Ukraine needs. He doesn't. I'm told. I'm not even sure. And I'm looking forward to his hearings because they're going to be very interesting. No one's dummy, Bridge Colby. What do you think about that nomination?
Well, I think Bridge is a very smart guy. I did read his book and interviewed him about it, and I think his perspective is a needed and nuanced one. I'm not sure that that's going to be something that necessarily comes through in the hearing, given the level of questioning that he's going to have to endure. But one of the things that I do think people should understand about Bridge is he views this as a situation in flatly, realist terms about what we're going to have to do in order to make commitments within the Pacific to make sure and expect commitments from our allies in the region to ensure that China does not do the things that they have been telegraphing that they intend to do for a very long time, not just related to Taiwan, but related to the whole of the Pacific and the control that they can exercise over the worldwide trade and everything else is already something that's top of mind for this White House. So I'm not surprised that he ended up in the admin. He's someone who has a good deal of fans on that kind of neo-realist side of things, but I don't view him as someone who should be, viewed with any kind of skepticism by those, who want America to take bold stands around the world. I just think that he thinks in terms of dollars and cents and, how much are we actually willing to spend and how do we spend that right in order to make sure that we aren't just wastefully throwing money at a problem that we know exists without thinking through what are the actual steps and tools that are needed to solve it and what can we rely on when it comes to our allies in order for them to take up their share as well.
Yeah, I'll take this moment to recommend to everyone who did not hear Admiral Montgomery, retired United States Navy, on the program yesterday, detailing why we need Virginia-class submarine production to pick up fast. It is our weapon of choice to deter China, and we got to have more of them, and they got to be repaired more quickly, and we need a new submarine shipyard. That brings me, superpower competition will put China off to the side for a period of time, Ben. The President Trump, talked to Putin and President Zelensky this week, and he did it in that order. But a lot of people say Putin and President Zelensky for a reason, because President Zelensky is legit and Putin's a dictator. But Trump just wants an acceptable deal. Do you think he moved the ball forward this week towards that?
Yeah, but I think that this was also just the opening conversation. I mean, this is not going to be something that happens overnight, as much as people might wish it to be clear. But look, he's been very much, sending the signal for a long time that, this is going to be something that has to be a deal that is worked out. And I think, the priority for him, and he stressed it again this week, is that he wants an end to war. He wants an end to the war that does not lead to a situation where Russia is just coming back and doing the same thing again in a couple of years, certainly not on his watch. And that's something that I think he wants to achieve. And as much as I think we can hope for that, we also have to be cognizant that there is going to be a lot of outside noise on either side of this that doesn't really have any clue about the way that deals like this are brokered or the way that the negotiations work. You're going to hear a bunch of the same people saying that Trump is a tool of Putin and that he's being naive and things like that. Or on the flip side that he's not shoring up enough the support for Zelensky or something like that. That's not the case as I see it at all. In fact, I think he's just being clear-eyed about something where, unfortunately, the prior administration was, again, completely not clear-eyed. They took too long to give Ukraine the resources that they needed, and then they didn't move them quickly enough, and it made the war prolong, and it's made things worse, and it's made more people die.
President Trump brought up the biggest mistake of all, which was the Afghanistan debacle, followed by the second, a minor incursion, which Joe Biden actually said, and Trump said that was
the minor
stupid.
Incursion thing. I'm glad that he brought it up again.
Yes,
people seem to have memory hold this. It's not. I mean, that was such an invitation, and it was one of these things that you had back-to-back instances of the display of American weakness, of our incapacity to handle something like the Afghan withdrawal. You had him tail between his legs on it, and then you have this minor incursion comment, which is again. Basically saying, oh, well, we'll invite, you can do a little bit. And it's like, no, you can't do that. You can't be a little bit pregnant. This is not a situation that the Biden administration, with all of its, vaunted foreign policy expertise that we were told by the media for so long, I mean, they made an absolute botch of it.
All right, I want to close with a media question, Ben. Are you under contract? No, you're with Fox, so you can talk about CNN. I don't want to put people in a position they've fallen apart. They got Scott Jennings as window dressing, and they've just absolutely crashed and burned. What happened?
I don't understand why CNN is so dedicated to making such terrible television. And by that I mean it'd be one thing if they were trying to make good television and failing, but they're dedicated to making bad television where they bring somebody on and basically get mad at them if they're not just a punching bag. They shut them down, they interrupt them, they fact check them with things that are not true, and it's absolutely terrible television to watch unless you just want to see people screaming at each other. I tried to watch one of those segments the other day, Hugh, and there was so much talking over each other, I could barely follow it, and it's like, do you think this is good television?
No, I'm not. I don't have a vendetta against Caitlin Collins. It's just she stepped in it repeatedly, saying that we're on the brink of a constitutional crisis. The last real constitutional crisis we had was the Civil War. FDR got close to one in 1937 with packing the court.
What's a constitutional crisis, Hugh? The president pardoning his son.
That's actually allowed for by the Constitution.
Yes,
it might be a political crisis, but it's not a constitutional crisis.
I know.
They want viral moments, and they can't get them with bad television.
Oh my gosh! I mean, Hugh, we deserve a better class of television, and that's why this was the podcast election, because people can actually talk and have a conversation the way that
you're the first
do
person who
with
said
so many
that.
People.
You're the first person who said that I've heard. Did you invent that? The podcast election?
I've been saying it for a little bit now. Yes.
Well, kudos to you. I'm going to steal it and try and memory hold that Ben Domenech came up with it. Ben Domenech can be followed on X at @BDomenech.